And we're live! Oh my gosh, this is exciting. Very exciting. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Late Night Book Club on my channel. We're your hosts for tonight, and we're going to be discussing August's book pick, The Other Black Girl, a thriller that was a very interesting read. So whilst we get ourselves all sorted and everything, leave your star ratings in the comment section, and my lovely two co-hosts will introduce themselves and talk about their initial thoughts, initial feelings, and give their star ratings as well.
Oh, someone just finished it 10 minutes ago. I love that.
Oh,
Wow.
the
I
chaos.
finished it late last night, and since last night, I just keep bouncing it around in my head, trying to figure out how I feel. And I was trying to work out information from both of these people, from Joel and Elias, trying to figure out how they felt about it, and they were not giving me anything. So this is going to be a surprise to see how they felt. Overall, I feel like there was so much good conversation about the publishing industry. Amazing conversation. I I saw some conversation around not really liking Nella, and I actually was rooting for her. I really wanted things to work out for her, and so I understand why maybe people didn't connect with Nella, but I also was like, oh my god, I hope everything works out. And so I feel like that's a good feeling for a main character. Um, but it wasn't for it to be compared to Get Out was interesting because Get Out for me was nerve-wracking in the first 5 minutes. You're on the edge of your seat. Like I was nervous the entire time I was watching it, and I didn't feel that way with this book the entire time. So, um yeah, I don't know if that's again, I'm still working through how I feel. So those are the first thoughts.
All right. Well, hello everyone. I'm Elias, and I'm giving this book 2 stars.
Oh,
This
wow.
was this was interesting. I agree with you, Noel. I had really good conversations, and I really thought it really, brought in some really good aspects of certain things. However, the execution and the writing weren't exactly my cup of tea. I really could not relate anything with Nella. I thought she was so boring and so bland. I thought overall the book didn't really go anywhere in any certain direction. I thought the thrills in here were pretty much non existent. I feel like if you had taken out pretty much, I want to say 60% of the book, you would still pretty much get the overall gist of the whole story, actually. Nothing really happened until the last, I want to say 30 to 50 pages. And yeah, I think that's just my overall non-spoilery thoughts. I didn't really have anything much to say about this other than the fact that it was just kind of boring and actually a little disappointing. Actually, very disappointing and really underwhelming. So those are my thoughts on this book.
Cool. Some very interesting thoughts. For me, I gave it a 3.5 stars. I liked the conversations, like Noelle and I said, surrounding this, and I think that definitely I felt the call more to The Devil Wears Prada than Get Out, although it did kind of get a little bit Get Out near the end, but I think the comparison was a bit much. I think that it was really interesting to see Nella as a protagonist and just see the way that she navigated the professional workplace. And I definitely related to it a lot concerning conversations that we've had in the publishing industry previously. I think where it failed for me was kind of the fact that the thrillerness didn't really start until the 60-70% of the way through the novel. So I wasn't really feeling like I was on the edge of my seat. I just felt like I was reading a workplace drama. Centered around the racism within the industry, so it wasn't really that thrilling until the end. And then I think also the abstract chapters that we had from other perspectives were very much often it didn't really fit well with me. It kind of just felt it was a bit disjointed.
I forgot to mention that in my review as well, but I agree about the disjointed chapters because I was excited to see how those chapters were going to play into this incredible ending that just really gets you. And I feel like those chapters leading up to those points didn't give the overall emotional impact that I thought they were going to have. I was really excited to see how her favorite authors chapters and how her storyline all wrapped up, and yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, this book had had left
Oh, go on.
me with so many more questions than answers. Like,
Hmm.
I honestly would have preferred if the book was centered on Kendra instead of Nella, because I thought
Okay.
Kendra's
Oh,
story was so much more interesting. Um, so
yeah. Well, I think that's everything for like the non-spoilery thoughts. So like people who have not yet read the book, um, go read it now if you don't want to be spoiled, because we are about to get into spoilers. So I think the very first thing I want to discuss is how you felt about the ending and like the way things came to be, like, and that.
Okay. I usually don't like ambiguous endings. I think like for me, usually for ambiguous endings, I'm like, wait, but what does this mean? Like what's the real ending? I don't understand. And I felt like with this, there was a lot that can be there's a lot more story that can happen after the end of this book. And yet I'm okay with how it ended. Like I'm okay that eventually Nella you know, doesn't end up with the route that I think we were all hoping her to go for, you
Mm-hmm.
know? I wish there was more said, and I actually wish that Nella didn't end up going that way because I would have felt so excited for her. I mean, again, I was rooting for her and I really wanted her to be okay and for everything to be fine. But I mean, for a epilogue, I thought it was pretty cool to like have something that threw you off a little bit. So I don't know. How did you feel, Elias?
I felt it was kind of pointless because I did not root for Nella as a character at all. To me, she seemed so insecure, and I get that, that insecurity is rooted in a lot of, different aspects, but she never really grew for me as a character throughout the entire book. And so I felt like she was stuck in the same place as she was in the beginning of the book. And so when we got to the ending, I felt like it didn't really go anywhere. And so
Mm.
when the ending happened as it did, I felt like maybe it would have been more or better if it had just left it at like taking out the epilogue in like in its entirety. I think that would have been better in my
Oh,
opinion.
okay.
But I mean, I did predict the ending. Actually, I was like, she's probably gonna get fucked, and like I don't know, she's probably gonna go join the dark side. Um, but I mean, I don't really have too much to offer on that. I guess that
Hmm.
maybe if they've taken out the epilogue overall, it would be better, or change the
Yeah.
whole ending.
Oh,
I mean, I did see
I.
some resemblance to like Get Out, but like, I mean, the thrilling aspect for me wasn't like the main issue in general. I think the topic surrounding racism and privilege was like understandable, but compared to the thriller aspect of it all, it didn't really bother me too much. It was more of like the execution of the characters and
Mhm.
the writing style. I think for me, I think the overall like nitty gritty details of the book was just something more I was not really vibing with, other more than the like thrilling aspect. So
Fun. I think I agree with Sophie's comment here when they say that they love the ending and they wish there was more time spent on it and expanded a bit, because I
Mhm.
feel like it very much like we got to this like tipping point where like Nella's like, I'm gonna go like do this, I'm gonna go confront, and then we see the ending and it's just, I feel like everything was just like handed to us, like all the explanations, all like the stuff right away, and it was just like, oh, like there's not really like a build up to that point, and it just felt like we were just like cut off. And then the epilogue was very, I think for me it was kind of um chilling in a way, because it then shows like the way that this like system worked is still being perpetuated, and that it's still going to keep going on, and we see like Nella's conversion to it because she doesn't really see any other way of surviving, and so
Mhm.
she's like, I have to like do this in order to like survive within this industry. And I
Mhm.
think it happens a lot with like writers within the industry as well. Like sometimes they just feel like they might have to conform to certain ways in order to survive. So it was a very interesting ending, to say the least. But I think for you two more specifically, were there any things that you felt like you resonated with as like people within the book community in terms of like the way this novel commented a lot about like publishing as a whole?
Yeah, I think the conversations around it were excellent. And I think actually what you were just saying about the length of it or the ending of it, I think that a lot of people or a lot of the reviews that I was reading was saying that it was too long, that it should have been a lot was cut out. But actually, if the ending was just moved back and then more was given to the ending and like the climax of all of these details coming around, I would have thought that was really, really just giving it that a bigger punch at the end with all of that coming to bear. I think that would have been a really the length of the novel is not what bothered me. It was that I wish there was more. Exactly what you said. Like it felt like the ending was kind of handed to us, and I would have liked more. More fear or more just trying to figure out all of the bits and pieces. And I mean, I really liked that aspect when she goes into Hazel's room and she's reading this information.
Yes.
And it would have been great if there was like more from that. Like if her and her best friend Malika could have like talked about it more and really like, bounced around ideas and feared a little bit more. If the ending was just pulled back a little bit, I would have thought that was really, really great. I don't know if that makes sense.
I get you.
So for me, I would have actually liked to see more nuance, I think, in terms of, I understand, like, I really thought it was a really great conversation between, racism in the book publishing industry. And I thought it would have been even more interesting if there was some more nuance brought to that. To me, it seemed like everything was almost like black or white when it came to handling that subject. I thought, I wish maybe more there was like another character who was also a woman who wasn't like evil or like on Hazel's, like similar to Hazel, like more akin to like middle ground. Maybe I think that would have been really interesting and brought something more from the book. I thought Malika was so like her story, her character was more interesting to me than Nella. And I was like, ooh, and I think it'd have been even more interesting if the story was centered on Malika's character because of who she was as a character. Because I don't know, Nella to me was so boring. She was so insecure, didn't really have a backbone, and it just wasn't really interesting from a story perspective, from her POV. So I did like the conversations, but I wish there was probably, I don't know, maybe more nuance to like flesh it out, bring it full circle, I think, instead of just painting everything just black and white. But I do understand that aspect to it as well. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
I think for me, it was kind of like the initial like portion where like Hazel was in the workplace and like just trying to like get through everything. That like initial portion felt like it ran a bit too long for me. Okay. But as I was reading it, I was drawing a lot of comparisons to The Devil Wears Prada, which is one of its like comparison titles along with Get Out. And I just felt like we were reading this novel from the perspective of like Emily Blunt's character in The Devil Wears Prada, where like Andy like comes in, she's like, oh, I don't really know much about things, like, oh, can you help me? And then suddenly Andy just like switches and is suddenly like so knowledgeable about everything, like amazing. And then like Emily's just like, oh, okay, like that's I guess I'm just being pushed to the side. And so I feel like when you take that and like add like the characters of Nella and Hazel into it, it adds so much more depth to me, because it definitely feels like there's that kind of position where like you're competing with other like people of color within the industry, because you're like, oh, I feel like they only want one of us, but like why can't there be both of us? And I think like the conversation that Nella has with Hazel like near the end, where like Nella has like this massive like confrontation to Hazel, be like, what is your problem? Like I almost spat out my drink at that. I was like, oh, she's doing it. But it felt like Hazel was very much like, yeah, like, we like we're in this together, we can do this together. But then I feel like Hazel just like switches like right at the end, where she's like, oh, there's only one of us that can be in her office. And it's like, oh, like
that's one of the things it was so predictable to me, that how the story would end. I wished maybe would have subverted that, that trope of, girl versus girl, it's just like,
yes,
I don't know. That's why I wish like maybe like a third party, like a different character who also worked in the workplace, maybe would have been interesting. That wasn't on Hazel's side, but less focused. I don't know. We'll never know. But
I think that's where like Richard should have been, I think, like developed a bit more, because like we're told like he's like the person like behind like a lot of the things that are going on with like the hair cream and like getting it to these young Black women, but it's like we don't really get to see like Richard kind of like behind it. We just get like these little snippets, and I feel like it was that part particularly was just a bit like, oh, like we could see like him actually doing something more actively, but yeah, he's just like this passive villain in the book. But yeah, I feel like also with the hair cream, like I liked it, like ish, but I do feel like again it needed to be explained
I did
more
too.
because it kind of just felt like something out of like left field, and I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. But yeah,
Did anybody
it was...
like predict that where it was like the hair cream was being used? Because then at first, wasn't it Hazel when she first gave it to Nella? I was like, maybe that hair cream is either like a poison or a concoction that I don't know is. I just had an inkling that the cream wasn't good.
Yeah.
So
Same.
I think it was like midway through the book.
It reminded me of this episode of Ugly Betty where basically the main character Betty gets this like really expensive perfume, and it turns out the perfume had toxins in that were like making her more aggressive and like making her like wanting to just like be a lot more spontaneous and stuff, and like it was killing her essentially. So when I saw the hair cream and like the references to like smell and the way that like it smelled just like Nella's but like just a bit different, it was like I don't trust it because it's like ooh. But yeah, also the missing label on the cream.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, know your ingredients.
Oh, no.
Yeah, know your ingredients.
I was like, oh.
If someone gave me like a product for my hair and they're like, oh yeah, I just made this, I would have been like, I don't know.
Like, oh.
Oh, dang it. I was going to say something. I forgot.
I was going to say to Joel, like, I really agree with what you were saying all about Richard, because if he's going to be the true villain, I'm down. But I want him to feel villainous. Like, he didn't get quite the moment in the book, like, to really make him. He felt more like we knew he was bad and we found out he was truly evil, but he still stayed back. He was, like, too far away from the story to, like, really feel like, I don't know, that, he just was too far back from the story. If he was going to be the true villain, I feel like there should have had this like huge confrontational moment between the characters, or like really making Richard be this horrible person that we could, but he didn't. I mean, maybe if we even got a point of view from him, that would have been like a chapter from him.
Literally.
Like maybe that was the epilogue where it was just him kind of like him in his own place thinking about the next evil he's going to do. Like maybe that could have been the epilogue, and then we're like, wow, I'm satisfied, I know who is evil, there we go. But he was just too far away.
Yeah, this whole book sort of reminded me of maybe like a less bizarre episode of like Black Mirror more than anything. Because you have this like product, but it's not exactly magic, it's like scientific, but it's like causing chemicals in the brain from the woman to act a certain way, or something along those lines. But I don't know, just want to bring that up.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to say the least, and I think like the more we're discussing it, the more I'm realizing like there's like certain bits about the story that were just like not making too much sense. But also I'm gonna go back to this comment actually, because this one, where it's about the hair cream being mixed with like hair removal cream. That I did think that, and then I was like, oh, maybe not, because it would be a bit too like Mean Girls for it to actually like do that. And I was like, this isn't like a comp title. But I really did like when Nella like snooped in Hazel's room. But also actually, I do want to touch upon this, like the way the story kind of like shifted into like a weird spy thriller, where like we just had like these groups of people just like meeting and being like, have you been watching her? Like we've been watching her for months now, and like all of this, and I was just like, this just doesn't feel like the same novel I started with at all.
I think even Malika kind of points it out at one point where she's like, why didn't you follow that car where the woman got pulled into the car? Like if she actually had followed that car, it could have been so thrilling, and it could have been like trying to figure out who she was and what was going to happen, and trying to get the answers to these questions. I feel like could have made it the spy, exactly what we were just saying, that kind of like all of a sudden it was a spy thriller, I think that if she actively went and chased after that car, she could have been getting some answers that would have made it really fun.
Nah, Nella Rogers
Actually.
could never. So you should not expect it out of her. Leica, maybe, but
Maybe. But yeah, then we had the whole like resistance thing, like resistance against like the hair cream
the
brigade.
OBG.
The
were-
OBG,
I
yes.
don't know. Yeah.
And it was just like I was like, this seems like it could be so much more like thrilling and exciting if like they had just developed it a bit more and like given us some extra depth.
Yeah, I
Or
agree.
just like scrapped it and had just like Hazel as like the villain and like Richard working together to kind of like get Nella to be like better within the workplace. Like I think that could have been better, but it just wasn't.
What was your guys' like I don't know, like predictions, for the twist? Mine was, I just thought Hazel was up to no good. I thought maybe in the end it would seem that Nella was an unreliable narrator, that really famous Dalila trope, and that Hazel was just on the clear, and that Nella was just imagining all of these, like, it's the gaslighting for me, But I mean, it was gaslighting, but it turns out, there was the hair products, the assimilations, and all that. But
That would have been interesting, actually. The unreliable narrator. It would have totally thrown me off.
Interesting. I think it would have been too easy for me. I think it would have been like, oh, and also, I don't know, perpetuate some certain stereotypes. I don't know, but
I think I had a prediction about Kendra Ray just like coming into it, and like when we saw like it led to like her phone number, I was like, okay, so someone's trying to get like them together for some reason. Like, is there something else there? And I think my just like prediction was that like someone was trying to use Nella to get to Kendra, and then because Kendra had something, and so she was like, ooh, like I'm just gonna use this like girl who's like suffering because of like we're just gonna like play with her, and that to get Kendra Ray out for something more sinister. But it didn't do anything like that. But also this as well. Like,
yes,
Owen was there.
Yes,
He was there. But yeah.
When Hazel knew Owen's name, I was like, "Whoa! What if there is something?"
Yeah, that never really went anywhere.
And she calls out Owen for it, and she's like, "Have you ever met Hazel before this?" And he's like, "No, never." And I was like, "Maybe he's lying. Maybe something's gonna happen." And then
that was literally an unnecessary red herring. It didn't really go anywhere. It was just there to make Nella seem like, maybe something's a conspiracy that's with like Owen and Hazel, or he's in on it or something.
To be fair, I think it would be more interesting if Owen was in on it, because then it was just
I did too. It would be like exactly like a Get Out situation. But
that close to home betrayal could have been so intriguing, and it felt like it was almost set up that way, because she says Owen's name, and you're like, what if Owen's like sneaking information out? Like, that would be so interesting. And then
I think I had like a feeling like near the end that Malika was going to turn around and be like, yeah, that's what we're doing. Like, she was actually one of them. And then like just like smother like hair cream on her head or whatever. But like, especially because she got like really like receptive. She's like, oh my gosh, this scarf would look so nice on you. And like, and then trying to like play like the, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to put that hair product in because it doesn't have ingredients on.
Wait, you guys were suspecting Malika?
No, I didn't suspect her. I thought if it happened, it would be interesting.
I just like, I think it was just like near the end where I was like, I need a twist. I was like, I need like something to like happen for me to be like,
I think it would have been interesting like if we had gone with Owen's direction, because he's only doing this because maybe it's like sort of like a Get Out situation where he's helping them because he could have maybe implemented like, oh, he also is using the product in his hair, or something like that. I don't know. Maybe he's just like, oh, it's being hip and being cool, but also like being used, but also at the same time like using the hair cream himself. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, honestly.
Do we think Hazel's... Oh? Did you accidentally X the tab?
It was whoop!
He was like, I'm done. I am done.
I'm waiting for his little box to pop up.
Literally. But meantime, do you think Hazel's... Oh, there he is.
Oops.
There.
I'm back.
Well, welcome back. You literally popped out and we were like, oh.
I accidentally clicked the back mouse on my button. On the mouse
no. Elias is out. He hated it that much. What I was getting to was, did you think Hazel's boyfriend was real? Because we actually never saw him in the book.
That confused me. I was waiting for him. I was like, he's mentioned enough and he's artistic enough. He's going to come out somehow. He's going to be in this someplace. And then he never shows up.
I thought he was real.
I thought he was real, but I'm wondering why he never appears, because he does get enough. He's enough in it where why don't they run into him at that when they all go to the event? Why isn't he there?
You're very you're not wrong, because it's apparently like, oh, Hazel's with this guy Manny, and you didn't really think much of it until his like physical description is like mentioned. And I was like, ooh, he sounds kind of hot. I do want to meet him, but we never met him in the book.
Yeah. Isn't there a picture with the two of them together on her Facebook?
Yes.
Apparently he had really great hair and was like a dope artist, but basic fashion sense. So I think maybe it could have been a front for Hazel.
Yeah.
You know, to like come up with like a better cover story.
Yeah.
But I think it might have been he might have been a cover story, you know?
Yeah.
But who knows, since we never really met him.
True. I mean, everyone feels like he is also fake.
Everyone thinks he's fake. Fake for sure. Fake ass hoe.
Just so Hazel could have connection to the salon. That also makes sense, because it's like, where else would you get the hair cream and stuff? And like, why else wouldn't it have ingredients on, you know?
So if we could switch out a main POV for Nella, what would our main POV choice be? And everyone in the comments. Okay. I loved her.
Yeah.
I think it would have been so like funny to see her up against like Hazel and Nella's position, because she's such a like strong character, and I loved it. And I don't know, I think the dynamics would have been different. It's just really interesting to read from instead of Nella's POV.
I think it would have been interesting to see Hazel's perspective.
Yeah.
Like, kind of unreliable narrator being like, oh yeah, I'm starting this new workplace.
Oh my god.
Meeting Nella for the first time, being like, oh yeah, I have this hair cream, you should totally try it. Like, thought she was being good. And then like at the end it like shifts and she's like, I know Nella is here, I know she slipped through my room, she found out. And then like slowly you start to see like the descent into like the like,
villainy.
We need to convert her. Like she's like a someone who isn't turning. So we're gonna do this. And then the final confrontation is like, oh my gosh. And then we see Nella in the like epilogue being like, hi, I'm Dalila. Nice to meet you. And it's like, oh
my god, that would have been so much better. Joel, the other black girl by Joel.
Thank you.
5 out of 5 stars.
Joel was always so good at these alternative endings. He's so good at it. He's the writer, so that makes sense.
Yeah, someone said Hazel being the POV would have created more of a thriller. Definitely agree.
Literally. To be fair, I think like Nella was a bit unreliable, but like I feel like it was more so kind of her doubting herself that kind of made like was the unreliableness rather than
her
the fact,
voice.
like,
I feel like her voice in the book really like parallels a lot of like similar like voices in like thriller books in general. I feel like she didn't. I don't know. She didn't really have like a lot of opinions. I feel like there was no. I can't really tell you what she'd like to do or anything, because I don't know, to me she felt like a very like a very flat two-dimensional character that um, there wasn't a lot of like details or information regarding her in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, talk about her character, I guess, but
Yeah, I feel like she definitely like had her moments, but I feel like at the same time, I think the fact that she didn't really grow is why she chose to do what she did at the end. Which is where Sophie then leads on to what were our opinions about Nella's decision at the end of the book?
Well, I know Elias doesn't feel this way, but I was rooting for Nella. I wanted her to be okay. I felt like she had such a strong best friend where she could have gone to her and been like, hey, I have this information. What should I do? And the two of them could have decided to move the other direction. So I was sad for Nella, but I thought it was good. Right? I thought it was a good twist at the end, like seeing her walk up
Mm-hmm.
and have that be like the last moment. I thought that was interesting. Just a
You're just
shrug.
like,
Just a shrug.
just shrug. I think it was interesting to say the least, because I think like specifically as like a Black person, it definitely like it's hard because like Nala at that point is ultimately feels powerless. She just feels like there's nothing else that she can do other than to give in, and it was and she, like when she decides at the end, it's just like uh that this is she just felt like that was her own route, and I think I more so like feel sorry for her in that sense, because she was like ushered into that route because of the things that happened to her throughout the story with like um the author, and like when she tried to raise her voice and then she apologized because that's like what she felt like she had to do in order to survive within the industry. And so because of that, she just feels like she just is powerless to try and change things, and so hence why I think she decides to do that at the end. So, yeah. I also agree with V's point here, where it's I know sometimes main characters are supposed to be passive and it serves the narrative really well, but I don't think it does here. And I agree. I think like we definitely need a little bit more action from Nella as a main character.
yeah. This basically just stems back going from what I said about like character growth and character development, because usually when we read about passive MCs, especially in thrillers, they tend to
Mm-hmm.
grow, and like at the end they're sort of like stronger person now, or like something happens, But in this case, I feel like Nella's arc was just same the entire like time, like no growth, no development. I feel like we started at point A, we never progressed from there. So
Definitely. I also think this was also a really good point. Where it was like focusing on like the race and microaggression
yeah.
within the publishing industry. Like I feel like I definitely felt a lot more about that, and it was interesting to see kind of like how like things were interpreted from different people and like the ways that they did things. It definitely makes a lot of sense considering the things like that have happened within the publishing industry concerning this. So
And then
well, I was a bit more like, oh, okay.
and then like how even if like you have Nella, even she read this and she's bringing all these issues up, they're like, oh my god, are you calling me a racist? Like they're so
Literally.
scared, but they're like not even willing to accept the suggestions or even listen. I think that ignorance stems from the first place. It's just so scared of the word diversity, or they think that they know diversity. It's just like, damn, what do we need to talk about this, but like not really know how to talk about it. It's just like those aspects of the book were just very familiar. It was just really interesting and nice to read about.
Yeah, definitely. Were there any other points anyone wanted to mention before we wrap this up and discuss next month's book? I guess not. I mean, to be fair, this is a really good point. She never got any development to the breaking point felt weak. I feel like she was getting there, and then it went from like 50 to like 100.
if Nella had, I feel like if Nella did the opposite of I mean, if wait, if she did the opposite of basically, succumbing to like Hazel and her ways or her group or whatever, I think maybe that would have been like the stereotypical like break point, breaking away, her character growth or arc, but she didn't, and so that, like, I guess ultimately just was like, what a letdown. Even though like it is stereotypical for like a character to like grow, it's just I think it would have worked in this book's environment or situation. So
Yeah. Definitely, I agree. But yeah, I think that is everything we wanted to say about The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us during this discussion today. Next month, it is a very special live show, as it will be 1 year. Well, technically now it's been 1 year since we started, but like it will be the 1 year anniversary live show next month. And that is very exciting because, it's been an entire year since we started this book club, which is...
That's crazy to me.
Time has passed by, and all of you voted that we are going to be reading Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is very, like, full circle, as the first book was also The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And then, again, in October, we'll be reading If We Were Liars. Is it If We Were Liars?
If We Were Villains.
Yes. Oh, If We Were Villains. Wow. I am combining, like, We Were Liars and If We Were That would
Starless Sea didn't win, but it's okay.
I'm sure we'll do the Starless Sea at some point. But yeah, I am very excited. I've already read it. So I have a lot of thoughts.
Noelle and Joel have already read it. I'm the only one who hasn't. I feel like actually a lot of people have read it already because Taylor Jenkins Reid and it came out a couple months ago. So it's a good summer read, I would assume. But this one takes place within a day? No. Just one family, right? Or one night?
It's 24 hours, yeah.
That's so interesting.
But then it also jumps back in time a lot.
So, it does?
Yeah. It's not just the 24 hours.
Not sure how I feel about that.
Very interesting. I think you'll like it better this time because it's actually related to the main plot.
Wait, better than Evelyn Hugo?
I meant better than the disjointedness of like these chapters as opposed to like these chapters.
Okay, probably.
So I think you'll like it a lot better because it actually relates to the plot a lot more strongly. Plus, you'll know exactly who like one or two of the characters are because of Evelyn Hugo. So
I'm excited.
Have either of you read the October book, Villains?
If We Were Villains? No.
Okay.
I have not.
I have not either, but I've heard some excellent things. So
same.
I'm excited.
I'm trying to see where I think my copy is like behind. It's on a pile of books, but I'll have to like find that. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and I guess we'll see you next month. Bye. It's ending.